Good afternoon, everyone. Author R. Weir, Randy. Hope you all are having a great day. I've got a great guest who's going to be at Killer Nashville this week, as will I, and I'm going to bring her up right now, and we're going to get right to it. So we have Caitlin um,
Rother.
uh, Rother. I knew I was going to screw that up.
Rother the author. That's how you
Author
remember
the author. See, you gave me the rhyme, and I blew it. I would have called you author the Rother, right? So yeah.
it. Yeah.
But thanks, Caitlin, for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Sure.
I know you're a busy person right now, uh, going all over the country, and you'll be in Nashville this week as well. But I appreciate you being on. And
Happy to be here.
yeah. So tell us a little about yourself, the important things to know, anything personal you want to say. I got a little background on you we'll cover in as well.
Why don't you read the bio and then I can add something? How's that?
Well, you want me to read the whole bio? You got a long bio
Oh,
on
I
there.
thought you said you wanted you had something prepared that you were going to read.
Oh,
I
I've
mean,
got
I can do that, but I just
no,
thought you.
some of the questions I got from your website is
Oh,
what
got it.
from
Well,
reading your
I
website.
am a New York Times bestselling author. I have my 16th book coming out in January. I most of my books are true crime, narrative nonfiction. So basically, I don't know that everybody writes narrative nonfiction when they write true crime, but what that basically means is it reads like a novel. So I write true stories in using fiction storytelling techniques, which means that as much as I can, it reads like a novel. Sometimes that's not possible because I don't have all the information that I need to authoritatively have it read like that, because that's what you need. That's always what I strive to do. And I have one novel called Naked Addiction, which is a prequel to the thriller series that's starting in January. So I have mostly been doing true crime for many years, but I'm switching it up here and I'm going to thrillers because, well, it's a long story, but my latest book that came out in June called Down to the Bone is a true crime book. We had 3 delays in publishing it. And I was so frustrated and so upset that I wrote 2.5 novels while I was waiting for it to come out. And then I said, you know what? I'm either going to look like an idiot for if I can't sell it, or I'm going to look like a genius that I just used this time to just churn out these novels. So let's hope it's the latter.
So yeah, we'll get into your true crime stuff, but you were an investigative journalist for a lot of years,
And
right?
I still am. I'm still a
Still,
journalist. I just
yeah.
don't work for a newspaper anymore. So books to me are long form journalism. When someone calls me a retired journalist, it's wrong because I'm still working at it. And I don't,
Well,
and I don't have white hair, at least that you can see. So I don't know that I'm retired yet. Don't put me in the ground sooner than I need to be there.
the newspaper world, of course, is struggling these days. So it's kind of
Yes, it's
probably
sad.
good that you're on outside of that world and doing your own thing
We
instead.
were just talking about that at one of the book signings because journalism is in a really, really sad state right now. And I know we're going to be having a panel that I'm going to be on of journalists at Killer Nashville. I'll be curious to see what kind of questions they ask us. But I think right now we are in a crisis of normalizing crazy behavior. The journalists are not asking the toughest questions that they should be asking. And I'm just reading softball stuff and I'm reading stuff that's very neutral. And, those are the old rules. But when you have people who are putting out disinformation and misinformation all the time, I really think you have to call it out. And I don't think we're doing that enough. When I say we, I mean the journalists who are still working at
Sure.
papers and TV and radio.
Yeah, and there's a fear, they're gonna not be asked back, and they're gonna be put to the back of the
Or they're going to
line.
get sued and it's going to cost
Yeah.
them $16 million, which seems to be the number.
there's
So
there's a magic number there,
it
right?
seems like it, yeah. If not more, but yeah.
Some lawyer makes up, huh?
Yeah.
And I also read on your website that you perform in a jazzy blues band. Is that, are you still doing that?
Yes, I am. In fact, I'm in a couple bands. One of them we just played a couple weeks ago. It's called SPIE Jam. And they're my partner, who I'm in the other band with as well, and I have been playing with him for years. He is an optics professional, and so he goes to these conferences 4 times a year, and there has gotten to be a group that plays together, and now it's turned into this huge thing, and everyone wants to come and play, and everyone comes and listens, and we have hundreds of people who come and are dancing and drinking and having a good time. And it's I play the keyboards and I sing backup for that band, and then the jazzy bluesy trio is me and my partner, and we have a bass player as well. And my partner and the bass player have been playing together for, I don't know, 25 years or something. So it's fun. It's mostly rock and roll, but when I sing solo, because I have issues with my voice, I've learned not to belt out too much or end up injuring myself. So, but it's really, I just wrote a post on Substack, which I encourage people to read, um, about the symbiotic relationship between my music, playing music and singing, and my writing, because they really do feed each other. And I found that, just writing alone is not, it doesn't feed my creative spirit enough. I get burnt out. I feel kind of like something's missing. I feel kind of empty. And then we have a rehearsal or something, and I feel much better. It's weird. It's like you're too low on protein and you have to have a protein shake.
Well, that was one of the questions I was gonna ask. Did you find writing therapeutic? But it sounds like
Writing is my
hand in
job.
hand.
Writing
Yeah,
is my job, and I
yeah.
I don't feel right if I'm not doing it. So like right now, I'm having the craziest year, 3 books out in 12 months, which means promoting incessantly. And I'm sure people who are on my Facebook page are probably really sick of it. But hey, I'm on a podcast. I have to promote it. I have to post it. I mean, you don't have to listen to it, I guess, and I have book signings and book events and pictures of me and the readers who come to my book signing, and I'm always posting something and several times a day, and that's what's going on. But yeah, but that's my job. And the and I'm writing as well, and then I'm also editing, and then I'm copy editing, and I'm proofreading, and I mean, I have all these books in play in different stages, and I'm not complaining because I'm busier than I've maybe ever been as an author. I mean, as a reporter, I was always busy, but working for myself, I had 4 years where I didn't have a book during COVID. I had a book contract that was I canceled it because the book wasn't good enough yet. I needed to work on it more, and that's the one that's coming out in January. I got a better publisher, so I'm glad I waited. But I had another book that I worked on for a year, and they canceled the contract because they didn't have the money to pay me. And so, I mean, it's been 4 years of nothing, and then suddenly, boom, 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 boom. So it looks like I'm doing it all at once, but I've been working on these things over time, and now they're all coming out. So it's great. I'm really happy. Things are going well. So I'm not complaining. I'm just tired. I'm kind of tired. So I'm getting a couple days rest. Then I'm going to get on a plane and go to Killer Nashville and be my perky self, hopefully.
Yeah, and those are long days. How long a flight is it for you to Nashville? Or
Well, it's 4 hours coming back. I hope it's about that going there. I'm in San Diego, so
yeah,
but I see that Clay has got me a clock in the morning, which is going to be the middle of the night for me. You know what I mean? 40-minute Q&A, and I'm like 8 o'clock. Oh my god! Anyway,
well, he usually has a glass of water up there, so you can always splash some on your face if you need to. But yeah,
yeah,
that's right. So I'll wake you up.
slap myself. I don't know.
Well, Clay will keep you going. He's a good interviewer. Have you
All right.
ever been to Killer Nashville before?
I
Is this
have not.
yeah?
I was invited to be a guest of honor, and I'm really happy about that. And I'm going to be on 4 panels, and I'm going to do, I don't know, something like 6 book signings. So I will definitely be around.
there'll be some long lines. I'm sure people buying your books.
I
So
hope so.
yeah, usually the
Buy them
guest of honors
all.
do really well. So yes,
I hope so. That'd be great.
you also coach and consult as well, and all this
Not
stuff.
so much right now, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, when I have time, I'm happy to,
yeah.
I do mostly phone sessions. So I'll help people shape the idea for their book and help them with book proposals that they submit. I help them give them suggestions on research and how to help research their specific book. I often get a lot of true crime aspiring authors that don't haven't been published before. So, and the thing is that if you haven't published anything before, it's kind of hard. Your first time's always hard. It took me 15 years before I got my first book published, and it wasn't. I started writing crime fiction first, and I couldn't get it published. It's really hard to get your first novel published. And so now I'm doing my second novel, and it's 17 years between the first one and the second one. And it was 17 years to get the first one. So that's 34 years to write and get and rewrite. Because I rewrote a lot of times, started over, went through different agents who was like, no, it's still not soup yet. So finally, though, I got this one accepted by Thomas and Mercer, and it's a 2-book deal. And I just submitted book number 3 and a synopsis of number 4. So I'm working to get hopefully another 2-book deal to keep, because it's a series, keep the series going. And as soon as I get a positive indication that they're going to take it, I've got number 5. Started plotting number 5 in my head. I will immediately sit at the computer and just thrash that out. Well, it's so much faster now. I mean, I finally know what I'm doing,
When do you
thankfully.
sleep?
Well, sometimes I have to take something to make myself sleep because, when you get older, you wake up at 3 in the morning and you're like, and your brain is just going and you can't get it to stop. And sometimes I lie there for 2 or 3 hours and I'm like, what am I even thinking about right now? But I think it's probably I'm watching the wrong thing before I go to bed. I watch, I'm watching this really good show right now. It's called Sneaky Pete. Have you heard of that on Netflix? It's
No,
really
I don't think
good,
I've
but
seen that one.
when they've got suspense and you're like, oh, I want to watch the next one, and you can't turn it off, but then this one is not quite, so bad. But the last one I was watching was a Blind Spot. There's a
Yeah, we've
lot
been
of
watching
shooting,
that.
chasing, and suspense, and that was really great. But it kept me up. I kept watching one more, one more, one more.
Yeah, pretty intense. We've started watching that as well. So yeah, that was.
But I
Uh,
watch these things because I need to see what's out there, and I don't want to come up with a book idea that's tired, that's been done, like that concept, that premise has been done too many times. But so it kind of gives me a good idea. And I learn from, storytelling from even watching limited series, even though it's a different genre. I kind of, I want to do my own limited series, and I've been working on trying to get that done with a couple different books and producers. And I had my last book was optioned. We didn't ever get it made, but I'm always that's the next thing, is to try to take my books and make limited series or movies out of them. I'm always thinking about that. So if
well,
anybody's interested.
yeah. Well, that's always a struggle, and it's a very long process as well. I mean, I hear
Yeah, and
often.
they don't always get, most of the time they don't get made, but I'm thankful that I've usually got some deal at least in the works and trying, which is new, because when I was um, earlier in my career, I was trying to get an option or trying to get somebody to make a series on my books, and didn't get as far as I've gotten since. So I'm happy about that anyway. Even though it hasn't actually come to fruition yet, I'm always got hope. That you have to have hope to keep going.
That's right. Well, and you get kind of tired of Hollywood and everything else. They recycle a lot of the same things over and over again
Yeah,
just because they can make money. And it's like there's so much good material out there that hasn't been done. It's like, come on.
I just we tried to go to the movies the other day and I looked at what's available and I'm like, just a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. There's not one single movie I wanted to see. There were like 20 movies, didn't want to see a single one. They were just, junk, 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 junk. Anyway,
Yeah. I just had one of those watchers, and we do get a few people watching. She was watching, but she likes watching the show. She's stuck at work though, unfortunately, so she may not be watching for long today. But I've interviewed a few other authors who were journalists before, investigative journalists and stuff, and that seems to be a path a lot of people will take. So who were, when you were younger, who did you like reading? What inspired you, or what inspired you even to be a journalist? Was there any history, like in your family, in that world?
no, I'm just crazy. I don't know. I've always been really idealistic about what's right and wrong. And I'm also very curious. And, I ask why a lot. I'm not really sure why I decided to be a journalist, but when I was a senior at UC Berkeley, I went to the job center and I tried to find some kind of internship or something. And the only thing that I could find that interested me was an internship at a radio station working for KGO Radio in San Francisco. And it was a consumer reporter. And so, I was supposed to do certain things that interns usually do, but she started giving me story ideas and to do research. And so she kind of basically taught me some basic stuff on how to find out things. And that's not stuff that you really it's right there, but if somebody doesn't tell you or show you, you get it's not obvious. It should be obvious, but it's not when you don't know what to do. So she kind of taught me the basics. I was in PR at the time, which I just hated because I had $100 when I graduated and I needed to find a job, and ended up with going back to that same job board. But I worked for the KGO radio for a year, and she had me helping her research stories. She actually recommended me for, I can't remember what it was, but something at the radio station to work. Maybe it was to fill in over Christmas or something. So, I mean, I was trying to actually break into broadcast first. But it's like people these days, I'm sure it's the same. I just actually read Hank Phillippe Ryan had an essay in Parade magazine, and it was resonating with me very much because she walked into a radio station and said, hire me. And she had the same issues I did, didn't have any news experience, didn't have any background at all. And she said the right thing, and I didn't say the right thing. So she got the job, and I didn't get a job. And I ended up kind of you know, going into PR for a couple of years. And then I went into grad school and I thought, well, maybe this will give me a leg up to go get a job at a newspaper because I didn't really. But I went into, the magazine program because I thought, I wanted to work at a magazine. Well, they don't tell you that magazine writing is advanced journalism and you can't just walk in and start writing magazine stories. So they took all my money and they didn't really tell me the truth. And so I ended up in the Washington program, and I started writing consumer stories because that was my background. And then someone got sick who had a beat at the South Carolina. I can't remember the name. It was these little papers who pay. I went to Northwestern for my master's degree. And so these papers pay Northwestern so that they get a student reporter, and the student reporter gets clips, which helps you get a job. And so that's what I did. And I ended up going to States News Service, and I was supposed to be unpaid, but I started churning out these stories. They started paying me just like everybody else, even though it was an internship. And then I ended up getting a job in Western Massachusetts in the middle of nowhere. And none of this was really that fun, to be honest. I just had started on this train and I was good. It seemed like I was good at it. But then I get to the Berkshire Eagle in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. They stuck me in a little tiny bureau. They didn't give me an editor who was in the same place as me. So I was expected to just like churn out these stories without any help. And I didn't know what I was doing, and nobody was really telling me what to do. And so they decided that I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't make it past probation. And I said, okay, well, then I guess I'll just go to this other paper that wanted to hire me. And I left without missing a day of work. And they're like, well, you could stay until we fill your position. It could take a couple months. I'm like, no, I'm going. Bye bye. And I went to the next newspaper and they loved me and they hired me. And then I ended up at the LA Times as an indentured slave for a year in a full time freelance position, which was illegal. They ended up getting in trouble. And then I ended up at the LA Daily News and then the San Diego Union Tribune. And I worked my way up to investigative reporter and started writing narrative in the paper, which led me to writing these true crime books. So it was a long journey. And I just felt a really strong sense of, exposing wrongdoing. I guess that's kind of been my motivation. And I think if you ask journalists, we all seem to share that. Even though we're all really quirky, different kinds of people, when you put a bunch of journalists together in a room, we have this tribe mentality of wanting to expose wrongdoing. I think that's where we have the commonality.
Yeah, it's interesting, the transition. So you decide. So you said you still consider yourself a journalist,
Mhm.
even though you don't work in the newspaper industry, which probably was a good decision on your part, since
It
that's
was good timing,
not.
actually, because everybody,
Yeah,
they were my fellow colleagues. There are maybe a couple left at the newspaper here locally. They don't have a newsroom anymore,
right.
and so my first thriller that comes out in January, one of the characters is an female investigative reporter. I don't know where I got that idea from. Um, and then a surfing homicide detective who they're kind of competing, investigating the same suspicious deaths and following each other secretly. And they both want information from the other one, but they both have their separate reasons why they can't share information, but that they end up helping each other sometimes anyway. And they're attracted to each other and they're not allowed to date. So you have this, conflict, the sexual tension. So anyway, it's basically historical fiction at this point because Katrina Chopin, my investigative reporter character, works in a newsroom. So I was able to kind of maintain that nostalgia when society trusted reporters and reporters were, seen as people who are actually trying to make the world a better place, and that people trusted the police, that they were actually trying to protect and serve, because the world's changed. So that's set 10 years ago, but
Yeah.
because I wanted there to be a newsroom, you know, because today these people work remotely at home and they don't see each other. I wouldn't want that. That doesn't sound fun at all.
Well, and a lot are even newspapers even putting out physical papers anymore. It's mostly online now, isn't it?
I
Not
have a
just this.
digital subscription, yeah. So, and I actually get this newsletter which has like 5 stories in it. So I don't even end up reading the whole paper because when I'm on the digital website, I can't find anything. I mean, if I know that there's something in there about me, I can never find it because I think it's probably in the very back after the
Probably.
comics, and I don't know what else because it's probably an art story or whatever. But the last story they did a story when my book came out in June, they did a really nice story, and I understood it took up like a page, two separate pages with photos and stuff. And I was like, I wanted to see the actual paper because I'm a Luddite
Right.
and I wanted to see it on paper. But I still haven't gotten a copy of it, so who knows? Does it really exist? I think so.
Maybe a library might have it, huh? I don't
Maybe,
know.
yeah.
Though, a lot of that. So the book you're talking about that's coming out in January is called Hooked, right?
Right.
So,
It's
and I
right
do
here.
have a
Hold on.
cover.
Oh, you have
Yeah,
it
and
there. Okay. I was
I
going
do
to
have
pull
it.
it out
Yep.
and show you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
I'm
love the
assuming the
cover.
cover hasn't changed.
No, no. In fact, we're working on the cover for the second one right now.
Yeah. And then this is the one that's right now is you've got 2 books, 3 books done,
4.
4 done.
I've got the fourth one is out with beta readers. The third one I just submitted to my agent and he's submitting it to my editor. So you have to when you want a 2-book deal with Thomas and Mercer, you submit one full manuscript and then a synopsis of the next one. So I did that, even though the fourth book is also already written.
And you've got Katrina and Good. So
Mm-hmm.
is Katrina you?
Well, they both have parts of me, but
Yeah.
neither one is me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a little bit here, being an investigative reporter,
Yeah,
have
well, I
to.
mean, I write about my experiences. I pull from my experiences as a
Sure.
reporter and as an author and as a person, and my relationships and or lack thereof over the years. I pull on all kinds of stuff. That's what's fun about fiction. And there's a lot of true stuff in there too. I mean, it's based in San Diego, and there's a bunch of scenes of real places and real restaurants, and then the characters are compilation characters. So, um, I don't want to get sued, right? So you can't, when you fictionalize characters, they can't be somebody with a different name. You have to take pieces of different people and compile them so you don't get sued. It's
That's
very
right.
important not to get sued.
Especially if you killed the character off in the book, right? Then
Or
you
they're
really.
doing something illegal, so or because it's about corruption. The series is about
Right.
exposing corruption and a bunch of rich people who are doing bad things behind the scenes to control government.
Which is
Gee, I
very
wonder
real.
and this is before where we are now, so it's not anywhere near as bad as what's actually going on. So that's the tricky part, is when you're writing about corruption and you live in a world like we do right now, it's hard to know what to do, because think about it. If we as writers had proposed characters and scenarios like what we're actually seeing right now, editors would be like, that's ridiculous. That would never
Right.
happen.
Right.
Seriously. I mean, it's just crazy what's going on.
It is, yes. You read it in the paper and or read it or see it on TV and you're just like, and you want, and a lot of it, there's so much point of view. I mean, there's just so much lying going on too that it's
I
just
know,
like
and
you're
it's
like,
all spin and it's all
yeah,
just but I read it all because I'm a news junkie. It's who I am. It's what my job has always been. And people say, well, you should stop reading the newspaper. I don't watch much TV news because that makes me really upset. Because
yeah,
then you have to hear their voices and you just like, "Ugh." But I have to know what's going on in order to write fiction that is believable. And like I said, you can push the envelope further now because look what's really going on in real life. And if you don't do that, you're going to look like you're doing some wussy thing, that's not real either. It's tricky right now.
yeah, it is. So,
That's why
well,
the true stories are true and that they are what they are. you know.
well, and I want to talk a little bit about the true crime stuff because
Sure.
some of the books are looks like very intense investigations,
Always.
murders, families and stuff. And when it comes to true crime, are you just telling the story, or is there a point of view that you're doing? Are you actually doing the investigation?
I do not do a point of view.
Yeah,
So, um my point of view is telling the truth. That's
yeah,
my point of view. So let's talk about Down to the Bone. Down to the Bone is about the murder of the McStay family. So it's a
mhm,
family of four, and they mysteriously disappeared one day from their home in Fallbrook, California in February of 2010. And it hit the news here in San Diego and it went national because it's very unusual for a family of four to go missing. Not so unusual for one child or a teenager or a mother, but a family of four, it's very rare. So that was big news here. And it was also big news because the circumstances when they disappeared were so bizarre. There were eggs left out on the counter. There was, fruit out on the counter, plates, half-eaten food, coffee in the pot, a couple bowls of popcorn that the boys 3 and 4 years old were eating. The dogs, two dogs, were left outside with no food and water. Joseph McStay is the father. Summer McStay was the mother. Summer left her prescription glasses in the kitchen and her three pairs of her favorite Ugg boots. And these are all things that are very unusual, right? They stopped answering the phone and they stopped answering emails after February 4th. The last person that Joseph McStay saw was one of his two business associates. One is Dan Kavanaugh, who did his website. Joseph McStay sold online waterfalls. He sold waterfalls online, rather. So the waterfalls were not online. The waterfalls were, things like you'd hang up on the wall in an office or something, or sometimes just freestanding. And so he and his other business associate, Charles Chase Merritt built the waterfalls. Dan Kavanaugh took care of the website where he sold the waterfalls. So these two business associates said, "Hey, where'd they go? They're not, Joseph is not responding to calls or emails." And so when they were reported missing on February 15th, the detective came and did a walkthrough in the house and saw these eggs and, the food left out on the counter and what have you. And then, but did not tell Joseph's mother or brother, who they interviewed that night, that he was going to serve a search warrant. So the mom came the next day and cleaned up the entire kitchen. So this is as they had left the house, that was all changed and gone. So by the time that they served the search warrant 4 days later, everything was all cleaned up and looked totally normal. So right away, the investigation got off on the wrong foot.
Oh, yeah.
And so the thing about this book, though, and it's similar to the last book that I wrote, and that came out in 2021, Death on Ocean Boulevard. Same sheriff's department in San Diego County, same homicide unit, same allegations against them and criticism for confirmation bias.
Is that one?
And so, yes, confirmation bias means that if you have a premise or a theory of one piece of evidence, you are just not going to change your mind no matter what else you come across. So in Death on Ocean Boulevard, the allegations of confirmation bias were that this is the Rebecca Zahau case. She was found hanging naked, bound, and gagged in the rear courtyard of this historic Spreckles mansion in Coronado, California. Her family thought that she was murdered, but the sheriff's department insisted that she killed herself. Tied her hands behind her back, bound her own ankles, stuffed a T-shirt in her mouth, wrapped it around 3 times as a gag, and somehow propelled herself over this little iron railing on the balcony outside and left only a couple toe prints in the dust, somehow magically flew off the balcony and fell 9 feet and 2 inches without hitting the ground. So she knew how long to cut the rope.
Yeah.
Anyway, so people
Yeah.
did not believe this. So the allegations of confirmation bias were that this woman killed herself. The allegations of confirmation bias in Down to the Bone with the McStay case, number one, the first detective with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department decided that this family had gone voluntarily to Mexico. So it was a missing persons case for 3 years. He gave up. He says, "I don't have any more leads. I think they went to Mexico." 9 months later, their skeletal remains were found in the Mojave Desert, where they had been the entire time, in 2 shallow graves. So one adult and one child in each of these 2 shallow graves, 2 sets of tire tracks, each of them were different, had a different wheelbase diameter, and neither one of them matched the person that was eventually convicted and sent to death row. So my book basically looks at these allegations of confirmation bias, explores those, looks at all the flaws in both investigations, because the second sheriff's department that looked at this case, it was now a homicide because they had remains. Confirmation bias in that situation was that they pretty shortly settled on the second business associate, the guy who made the waterfalls, Merritt, and they decided he was the guy. Even though they spent a lot of time, and I have all these search warrant affidavits looking for all these things that they never found to support their premise, and that didn't matter. They still decided it was him and they arrested him. and the jury went along with it, and he's, on death row. So the book looks at the holes in the prosecution's case, the discrepancies and the conflicts in the timeline and in the evidence. For example, there was a surveillance camera across the street at a neighbor's house who captured about an hour's worth of footage that showed a white truck pulling out of the McStay's driveway and going down the street. And the San Diego County Sheriff's Department thought that that was the McStay's Isuzu Trooper, which was later found near the border in a shopping mall and had been towed from there. But the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department decided it was Chase Merritt. And so if you look at the phone records at 7:47, Joseph McStay's phone called Chase Merritt's phone right around the time that this truck is being shown driving down the street. And so the prosecution says, well, Chase Merritt purposely called himself with Joseph's phone to give him an alibi. Well, then who is on Joseph's computer at 8 o'clock working on a CAD program for a waterfall that he and Chase Merritt had been discussing all day? If he was already murdered and dead and in the back of that truck, who's on Joseph's computer? And if they were killed in the afternoon or evening, then why do they have breakfast food that's left out all over the kitchen? So there were like a number of these discrepancies. And they had a prosecution witness who's, they wanted to say this is Merritt's truck. So he did these measurements. There's reflections off pieces of metal on the side of the truck and on these lights and different things. So he did all these metrics. And he said, I can't tell you that's Chase Merritt's truck, because if it were Chase Merritt's truck, his wheels would be underground if this is the same truck, which is impossible. So I can't testify to that. So they fired him, and they went and found another expert who would say that it was Chase Merritt's truck. And he ended up testifying on the defense side. So I'm just saying, there were just a number of these things. And so that's what my book is about. And so I basically chronicle the whole thing. 4 months before my book was due, I ended up getting a truckload of discovery materials. So that means investigative reports from both sheriff's departments and witness interviews. You cannot get these with a public records request. Somebody in the case has to actually trust you and give them to you. So I got them legally, but not through a public records request. And that means that there's a ton of stuff in this book that's never been released publicly, because this is not stuff that the sheriff's department ever wanted to be revealed, because it basically walks you through what they were thinking, who they interviewed, who they did not interview, all those false efforts to try to find blood in Chase Merritt's truck, for example. They blue starred the whole thing, sprayed it, not a drop of blood in the house. So it's just, there's a lot of issues with this case, and that's what the book is about.
Is that the one that was delayed several times?
Yes. Yes.
Was it for legal reasons? They were worried about what was in there, or what was?
Well, it took a little while for the vetting, yes, but there were some internal issues at the publisher that had nothing to do with my book that I didn't even know about. But I thought it was my book. That was a thing. It was like torture, and I didn't know what was going on, and they weren't answering emails, and so I didn't know what was happening. So that's why, it ended up being a blessing in disguise, because I wrote 2.5 novels, and that's how I'm going to look at it. It motivated me. I mean, whatever it takes, right? I mean, so my mantra is pretty much, don't give up. I was so depressed. I was so angry. I didn't know what was going on. And there was nothing I could do. And I kept emailing my agent, and my agent was emailing my editor, and she wasn't answering. And so we didn't know what was going on. It was very frustrating. And I'm sure my agent was, annoyed too, that I had to keep nagging him, can we email her again? Can we email her again? Can we email her? So I'm just typing away, writing novels. And so, like I said, maybe it was all, I don't want to say it was for the best, but because I wouldn't want anybody to have to go through that.
Suppress the book too,
Well, I didn't know what it was. Honestly, I didn't know what was going on. So, but it's all fine now, and the book is out there, and I'm getting really great responses. I mean, I go and give a talk, and basically the people in the audience are going like this: I can't believe that. I can't believe that, which is always rewarding because that's the response I want.
So you said this one gentleman that they convicted is on death row. Is there any hope that this may get overturned down the road with your book and the information that's
Well,
come out?
that was not my intention because I don't take a position on his guilt or innocence. In fact, what I basically say is I don't know who killed this family because there's so many unanswered questions. We don't know how they were killed, where they were killed, when they were killed. There's nothing definitive in the evidence that can prove any of that. And whatever the prosecution came up with has holes in it and discrepancies that I just have issues with. And for some reason, the jury overlooked some of these things and just let it go. So,
Yeah, sometimes you never know about a jury depending on who's
and
on
I
the
didn't
jury.
talk to the jury, so I don't know what was going on in that deliberations room. I wish I did.
All right, we've gone about 40 minutes. So I know I got to keep within an hour here because you're a busy person. But did want to ask, researching a true crime and a fiction book. Obviously, there's a differences
Night
involved.
and day.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so here's the thing. When I wrote my very first, do you have a cover, Naked Addiction?
I do.
Um, that is the prequel. Okay, so that was when I first started out, that was the first book I ever wrote. Okay, I couldn't get it published. So the first book that I ever had published was a true crime book called Poison Love, which you also have. But Naked Addiction has the same detective, the same surfing detective, but
Mhm.
it doesn't have the female investigative reporter and a bunch of new characters that I created. So this was I tried to make a series out of this one, but I just didn't know what I was doing. So the research has come from my experience in writing all of the true crime books. So now when I'm writing fiction, it's all in here. And when I run into some scenarios like, what would the FBI do at this point? Because Ken Good, the surfing detective, ends up getting on an FBI task force. So he's a homicide detective with the San Diego Police Department. Um, but I have him, still working with the police department, but now he's on a federal task force. And so he's a sworn federal officer as well. And that gives him more play and more ability to do different things as a character for me, which is great. Um, but I have to research. So when I run into things that I still don't know about, I have people to call who I met researching my true crime books. So I have beta readers. I have two retired guys who have really helped me out a lot. One is a retired homicide detective that I worked with on two of my books. You have one of them, Dead Reckoning. And then I'll take care of you, what you don't have. So he was the lead detective. He was a sergeant for the Newport Beach Police Department. He's one of my beta readers who I depend on, and I can ask him questions. So he helped me with this helicopter crash scene. He's like, I was reading this, it just didn't seem right. So I called a couple friends of mine who fly helicopters for, this agency, and I checked it out, and this is what they told me. So they really helped me out, which is great. So I don't want to make some mistakes and look like an idiot. The other guy was also a police officer and ended up working for the regional computer forensic lab. So he was a computer forensic examiner that I met through my very first book, Poison Love. And he was also a sworn federal officer on a task force. So, I mean, a lot of the stuff, these people help me with, types of guns and ammunition and caliber stuff and, all kinds of stuff that I have a lot of experience, but I certainly don't know everything that a police officer knows. But I do know how detectives think and how they talk now. And so when I wrote my first book, I didn't really know all that. And so the first book is a good novel, but it doesn't have the police procedural knowledge in it. And now I know all that stuff. So in terms of research, I've done it over the past, 20 years. And so now when I do research, it's much more targeted. Do you see what I mean?
Sure.
Whereas when I'm doing a true crime book, I've got to research the entire thing top to bottom because it's a case that has its own unique set of evidence. And police officers and detectives and judge and attorneys and family members and victims and medical examiner, autopsy information. It's all, each case is different. But I've learned over time what to look for, what to ask for, and then I notice things, to look deeper into.
Well, in the nonfiction, when you're investigating stuff
Which is
like
fun. I really enjoy that actually as much as the writing. So I kind of miss that, to be honest. When I'm writing the fiction, I don't have to do as much research and I kind of miss it. It's fun it's like putting a puzzle together. So that's one thing. So now the puzzle pieces come together. I have to go take a walk. Like, I don't know what to do, but I'll go take a walk and then I'll think it through and I'll go, I'll have them do this, or maybe I'll have them do this. And then sometimes it'll be 3 a.m. That's what I'm doing in the middle of the night, I guess. My brain is still working.
there's been many times I've gotten up in the middle of the night and I have to write something that's in my head that won't let me sleep. So it happens,
But it's
Maybe
good to
that's
be
where
passionate.
the
It's
best
good to be.
creative stuff comes. So,
It's good to be passionate about what you do.
yeah. So, but I figure you've got to, when you're doing the true crime, there is a lot of disinformation you've got to filter through as well, right? I mean, there are facts, but I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's
Well,
done that's
and
kind of misleading.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because, you have two sets of attorneys and they're presenting
Oh, yeah.
interpretations of evidence. Okay. So the truth is probably not exactly what either one is saying because they don't know. It's interpretations of evidence. And so the jury is then going to go on personality, tone of voice. I mean, I think that's what happened in Down to the Bone. There was a number of very technical areas of testimony about DNA profiles and probabilistic genotyping, which is what they use, to come up with a DNA profile when there's a teeny tiny bit of DNA and is more modern use of technology. And the prosecution dismissed it as junk science because it's defense evidence that they want to get rid of. It's making their case look bad. So they want the jury to think that it's bad, right? That it's not believable, that it's junk science, when in fact, they use a very similar type of technology with a different vendor. And they don't think that's junk science.
Right.
They're very similar. In fact, they're so similar that one company sued the other because there were so many similarities between their technology. So, I mean, that's the kind of thing that bugs me. And so that's the kind of thing that I try to highlight. I don't come out and say this person is lying or bad or unethical. I just try to illustrate and show the jury by just presenting exactly what happened and who said what, and let the reader come to these decisions on their own. And believe me, they do.
Well,
I
I'm
don't
not.
have to put my opinion or steer them with any kind of narration.
So, when you're writing, are you a pantser or plotter? And obviously, probably maybe different for both. Since
Well, okay. So when I wrote Naked Addiction, I don't think I outlined it at all.
yeah,
And I rewrote the first chapter like a million times and ended up years later coming up with 10 brand new pages at the beginning. So I wasted a tremendous amount of time because I didn't know what I was doing, like I said.
yeah.
That's a huge mistake so any beginning writer, don't keep rewriting the first 10 pages until you get it perfect because chances are they'll probably change. So what I do now is I I plot it out because every true crime book, in order to sell it in a book proposal, you have to have a chapter by chapter outline. So
Sure,
that's how I've come to write books. I
sure.
find that makes you think things through, and that's good because I listened to a podcast with John Irving interviewed, and he said, I never start a book until I know how it ends. Good advice.
Yeah.
So I don't always necessarily know exactly how something's going to end, but I have to know where I'm going. You have to know where you're going, or your book is going to go all over the place. And that's what ends up happening for me anyway, if you don't outline it, that you end up backing yourself into a corner that you can't get out of. That's not where you want it to go. because your characters want to start doing things and you can't tell them what to do because they have minds of their own after a while. And they have their own voices and they just start taking over. Well, that's okay as long as you keep on track somewhat. There was one, I think it was the third book, I wrote an outline and then I didn't really follow it, but I did outline it. Okay. And so I ended up coming up with actually better ideas. So I definitely always plot and I always outline, but I have found that I allow myself and my characters to veer off if I have a better idea.
Yeah, you're
And
not.
I do. I tend to get better ideas the more I think it through. And I go, well, that's a twist, but it's not good enough. So sometimes I'm like, maybe I need to go harder because I just had my first and second book edited with a developmental editor, and I had to change the climax scene in this, was it the second book, and add more twists and more things that you weren't expecting because I guess it wasn't surprising enough or climactic enough.
Yes.
Because when you're watching these things on TV, they always do something funny that you're not expecting at the end, right? I don't know. I thought I had already done so much that I was just trying to resolve it and get out. But
Yeah.
this editor said, no, you need more of a surprise things that went wrong. And I was like, okay. So I added three more things. So not one huge thing, but like three more things. So that's what you're doing. And you're not constantly going back in and layering in more depth in the character and in the plot and backstory and context so that it makes more sense. And
Sure.
it's like my first draft now when I write really fast. I'm writing them really fast these days now. Like took me 17 years. Now I'm writing them fast. It's a lot of dialogue. So I'm going back and I'm fleshing out scenes
Right.
with other description or character development or whatever. So it's not just dialogue because otherwise you might as well have a screenplay.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I write sometimes is there's a lot of dialogue and then I'll add the other stuff in
Yeah, just go
later
back and
on just
layer it
because that
in.
dialogue is running through my head and I don't want
Right.
to interrupt
I
myself.
got the voices talking. If the
Yes, sir.
voices are talking, you got to let them talk.
All right, so I always ask everyone on the show, and we're getting down there. We got about 7 minutes left. Bringing life to characters is the name of the show. I always ask authors, what do you do to get those characters to jump off the page that people love? Obviously, it's a little different for your true crime as opposed to your fictional type work. But what do you look for to make those characters realistic for people when they're reading?
Well, with true crime, they are real people.
Yeah.
So you can't make anything up. And so I just really try to go behind the scenes and show who they really are. And even if they're the good characters, I show their flaws and I show the bad decisions. Nobody deserves to get killed, but I think you're not doing anybody any justice by hiding things that they did wrong that could have saved their lives. You know what I mean? So, for example, in Dead Reckoning, Tom and Jackie Hawks were the most beloved couple. Everyone loves them. They're the victims. They were tied to the anchor of their own boat and thrown overboard and drowned alive, by being pulled down into the depths of the ocean, tied to this anchor, which has got to be the most horrible way to die that you could possibly ever think of. But the fact of the matter was that Tom Hawks decided he wanted to save money and not go through a broker so that he could keep the commission. And he did the sale himself. So nobody vetted the guy that came to buy his boat, who turned out to be the one who killed them. And then he also tried to make a deal with the guy so he didn't have to pay as much tax on it. And said, you can say that you gave me more money, but or less. I can't remember what it was, but it was whatever he had to do to sign the paperwork for changing the dollar amount from what was supposed to be real, in order to save money in taxes.
Right.
So I pointed those things out not because I'm trying to make a murder victim look bad, but because these things ended up attracting somebody who took advantage of them, and you have to be careful of how you conduct yourself and who you're going to attract into your life. And I think that's an important lesson for people to know. And his family never said anything to me about me including those things because they were true. So, like I said, even though he was a great guy, everyone loved him, he did have a couple, fatal flaws. So, like I said, nobody's black and white. The bad people are not always all bad either. They love their mother, you know. I'm fascinated with characters like Tony Soprano or, these characters who kill people all the time, and yet they're sympathetic. They somehow have been made to be sympathetic. And so that's kind of what I try to do is I want everybody to be three-dimensional. So that's what I do with my true characters, my real life characters. And that's what I do with my fictional characters too, for the same thing. I think the world has a lot of gray and nobody's black and white, nobody's all good, nobody's all bad, and it's not real. And so, how close to the line do they get? But are they still good people? And my people are good. My people have integrity and ethics, which is not necessarily the case these days with police and reporters. But these two people are good. And they're good in a unique way. Like I said, even the people reading my books, my beta readers, are telling me these guys, they're different from, most of the characters you're going to see, and in real life too. I mean, there's always the cops that are cutting corners and prosecutors too. And that down to the bone case. Anyway.
Lots of that, yeah. So Chris commented here. Chris does has a cold case book, and actually she's got a couple of cold case books, but she's a author friend of mine, and she's very familiar with a lot of the stuff that you had. And she's going to be at Killer Nashville too. She's doing a keynote during the award ceremony. So
Ah.
she already told me, Randy, you got to help me out when I'm up there. So I told her, I says, do you want me to heckle you or what? What do you want me to do? Right. So
I have to give a speech also. I have no idea what I'm
yeah.
going to say.
Oh,
Because I've never been to this conference before. I'm not
yep.
really sure what's expected or what people want. So,
Well, I'm sure you could share a lot of what you shared today with everyone as well. So it's especially when it comes to true crime, which is very popular these days. Lots of Netflix shows and Amazon Prime shows and stuff. I sometimes wonder, how accurate some of those are as well. But
oh, it makes me crazy when they
yeah,
when they do those reenactments, and I'm just like,
yeah,
that's not what happened. They don't know. I like the documentary style ones where they're interviewing people and they don't try to speculate or,
right. Yeah, there's no agenda.
yeah.
It's just laying out the facts and all that. So you're going to Killer Nashville. You have some other events coming up the rest of the year. You want to tell people about
I've
it?
been I've been doing events since January and February, so I'm kind of petering out here. I have some events here locally in San Diego. When I get back, I've got one at the end of August, and I've got one in September, one in October, one in December. But there's only one per month. After all these many, many, many weeks of book signings and traveling around, driving around, I'm finally coming to the end of Down to the Bone, gearing up for Hooked now, the promotions that are going to start probably, December, January, because the book comes out January 13th. And I'm
Yeah.
switching genres, so it's a little scary because I don't know how many of my true crime readers are going to come with me. So we'll see. I need to find new readers who are fiction readers. And I'm hoping that my true crime readers will come with me, at least some of them. It's funny because
So I'm assuming.
I have a woman who is an author. She writes romance, and she's done really well. And she loves my true crime. And she just read Hooked, and she said it reads a lot like your true crime. I loved it. So it's
Yeah.
actually, I guess I'm, just using, like I said, I write true crime with fiction storytelling techniques. So it's not that weird that the fiction is not going to read that much differently. So that's great. I'm glad. And I was so happy she said that. She loved it. So I was like, yay.
Well, I'm assuming you won't have copies of Hook at Killer Nashville. Hooked at Killer
No,
Nashville.
I won't because it's not out yet, but I will
Yeah,
have one to show everybody.
yeah.
It's
I didn't
I've
know if
got
you had ARC versions. Sometimes people
I
they have
I do. I
full
have one
version.
right here. See,
Yep.
look how thick it is.
Oh yeah, big book. Well, I'm sure people will be buying it. Okay, well, we're at an hour here, so your website I'll put up on the screen.
Thank
That's the
you.
best place for people to get a hold of you at.
Uh-huh. I'm on Facebook and I call it Twit Feed still, but X,
Yeah, I don't
and
like.
Blue Sky and Threads
Oh,
and
cool.
Facebook and what else? Instagram. I'm everywhere. LinkedIn.
And I saw you that you on your website you have a place there where people can buy signed copies of paperbacks as
Yes,
well.
just email me and we'll work it out.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Caitlin. I
Thank
appreciate you
you.
being on the show.
I'm happy to be here.
Hope I get a chance to talk to you a little bit at the event. I know you're going to be
Yeah.
very busy, but I'll be in the audience occasionally. I'll try not to heckle you as well. So,
Good, thank you. All
well,
right, I'll
thanks for
see you in
coming
a
up.
couple days then.
We'll see you in a couple of days in hot Nashville. So hot
That's
and
hot.
humid.
Okay,
Yep.
good to know.
All right.
All right, see you
Take
then.
care.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you being on, watching the show. No shows for a couple weeks since I'll be in Nashville this week. And then I have, what was it, James Bow after Labor Day weekend. So, but I take a couple week break from shows and then we'll be back at it again to get through the rest of the year. We're going to have about 3 a month through January. So thanks. And we will see you all in a couple weeks.